Welcome to Leadership Rules, where we believe leadership isn't just a role, it's a way of life. Whether you're leading a team, a community, or simply leading yourself, we're here to help you unlock the rules to lead your life with purpose and impact. I'm Nick Coniglio, and I'm joined by my co-host, Marnie Stockman. And together we co-authored Lead It Like Lasso. And today we're thrilled to have Milam Miller with us as today's guest.
Oh, yes. All right. So let me tell you a little bit about Milam. He's a former senior leader in sports, and he's been described by clients as the real life Ted Lasso. So you can imagine how we ran into him. Right? So as a result of his leadership in European football, where he influenced a cross-cultural sales team that generated in excess of $20 million annually. Following his love for people and human development, Milam launched his own leadership development practices called Be Confident and Kind. So a movement to build a better future of work. He's a full-time keynote speaker, corporate trainer, and an expert on soft skills. His mission is to help leaders increase external sales and reduce internal conflicts. He's advancing his mission through the release of his first book. We've gotten a sneak peek at, so good. The Charisma Craft, a modern leadership guide to enhance your Riz factor. And that is aiming to be out in June this summer, 2025. So we, like I said, got a sneak peek, super enjoyed it. Milam, how'd we do? Anything else to say about that?
You nailed it. I'm blown away. Thanks for my name is hard enough, Milam. So getting the bio right too is also a challenge. But thank you for that warm introduction. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're quite welcome, and congratulations on the book. Like Marnie said, we both really enjoyed it. So can't wait for that to come out in June.
Yes, it's been a labor of love, Nick. So I'm excited to get it into the world.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get to know you a little bit through some icebreaker type questions we like to call biscuits with the boss, and you should be very familiar with that, knowing that your affinity is Ted Lasso. So first one, real quick. First concert, best concert.
Oh my gosh, I'm embarrassed to say this. First concert that I can recall, 2000 Backstreet Boys, Millennium. And the only reason I know this, Nick, is because I got a glow stick that I took home with me in the stretch limousine I rode with all my friends with to the concert. And my parents found that glow stick years later when we were moving out of my childhood home. So 2000 Backstreet's back. All right.
Nice.
Fantastic.
I'm embarrassed to say that if I really ever want to get pumped up, I throw in a little Backstreet Boys. So I'm with you.
No shame. Yeah, I'm here for it.
Love it. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Nice. Dog or cat?
Oh. For friends that might be listening to this episode, they're going to totally be like, he's a cat guy. But truth be told, I like cats that act like dogs, if you know what I mean. So
I do.
I want a big golden retriever that's like cuddling with me on the couch. But if a cat does that, I mean, I'm not opposed either. So I'm going to say 50-50 as long as the cat acts like a dog.
Fair. I had a cat that would, I'm actually allergic to cats. I had a cat that would fetch. So and I somehow wasn't allergic to this one. Very strange. So very much acted like a dog. Favorite Ted Lasso quote?
Be curious, not judgmental.
Yeah. It's such a good one.
Giddy up. Okay, let's last one, and this kind of lead into our conversation. Leadership, more art or science?
Ooh, okay. We could really dig deep on this today. I think it's both. I think it's the art of the individual, their personality, understanding, sense of self, but most importantly, others. Leadership is about them. And I think there's tons of science that we can look to for tips, tools, tactics, techniques to become a more effective leader. So I'm going to say both.
We would agree. So your background explains why you have the real life Ted Lasso on your profile, right? Love that. And now you're writing the book, like we mentioned, on charisma. So do you have any stories that connects the dots between Ted Lasso and the power of charisma?
Sure. Okay, there's so many, I feel like, incidents I could pull from, but I like to go back to the beginning. And for maybe those watching, when I think about the beginning, I guess it's over here. In the past, right? As we're moving forward. I remember in that, I believe it's the pilot episode, Ted Lasso's on a plane and some passengers in front of him are like, hey, that's the new coach of AFC Richmond. And he's thinking, oh, cool, like they're just being friendly or gregarious or like reaching out, when really they were making fun of him, right? And it was not uncommon for him to be called derogatory terms in the UK, such as wanker and so forth. So he really had the cards stacked against him, and yet he didn't get discouraged. He didn't get down. He stayed authentic to himself. He was bold by moving from American football to European football. And he got really curious about his colleagues, the players he was coaching. It was really about the humanity, getting to know them. And that's what I see as the ABCs of charisma: remaining authentic to yourself, being bold in the face of adversity, and getting really curious about self and others. So there's other incidents I could certainly point to throughout the show. I think the most profound part, just to bring it full circle, is when Rebecca Welton finally shows her cards and is like, I've been trying to undermine you. I've been trying to sabotage this club because I knew it would hurt my ex-husband Rupert, and this is the only thing he's ever loved. And instead of being like, are you serious? Like, you really did all that to me? He could have been angry. He could have been bitter. He could have been resentful. He met her in that moment. It is the most beautiful thing of seeing somebody else's humanity and saying, divorce is really hard.
Yeah.
So to me, that I'm like, oh, that is such a charismatic individual. That is somebody that, like, while he is a fictional character, forgiveness, these themes that are human themes, we can integrate this into life and in the workplace. And how much better would it be if we actually felt connected to our colleagues to be that vulnerable and be that trusting and be that forgiving?
Absolutely love that. So we touched on your bio a little bit in the introduction, and through our conversations, we have come to learn quite the journey you've had becoming where you're at today, and you do so many different things. But we're curious around what really sparked your transformation into where you're at today, and how has it changed? How's that changed the way you approach your life and work in general?
I like that word spark, Nick. What sparked the transformation? I'm sure a lot of listeners can relate. I think the thing that sparked it was realizing that I was living out of alignment, at least with regards to the job I was in. And I use the analogy of, I got 1 degree off course, and I knew that about 5 months into a job. And I knew that if I stayed there 5 years, the destination I was going to end at would be far, far, far away from where I wanted to be. And so there were a couple of options I had: try to change the situation that I was in and form that. I was a senior leader, fully remote, which, golden retriever guy, y'all, like, that is tough. Like, I had a manager tell me at that employer, you are an outdoor cat. Like, you're a BD guy. You need to be in the field meeting people. And my energy was so down. I felt discharged. I felt disconnected. And so through best efforts trying to change that, I realized I'm fighting a losing battle. And there were some other, scenarios I considered, all within logic. But really, when I honored, Nick, that gut intuition feeling, it was this just ain't it. And that's okay. The acceptance that I thought a job would be one thing, it turned out to be another. Let's not carry any sort of again, bitterness or resentfulness or even shame about it. Just take charge. And so I did something that I had never done. I quit, and I call it quitting corporate. Another kind of powerful analogy, I think sometimes that resonates with listeners, is like, ask yourself, do I need to grit through this? Which in some cases, there's been seasons of life where the answer to that was yes. But in this case, it was, or do I need to quit this because it's out of alignment with my values and who I want to become? And that was so crystal clear for me. So that was the first time I quit anything other than high school basketball, if I'm honest. And I remember, like, my dad saying, are you a quitter? And I was like, Dad, I'm quitting because I'm doing something else. I'm not quitting to do nothing. I'm transferring energy here. And so that ultimately was what, to use your term, sparked me to realize I want to serve and have impact in the future of work in a different way. So my impact is external. It's not from within 4 walls as a W-2 employee. And that's been my North Star to develop leaders ever since that moment.
So I wrote down 2 things. First, the 1 degree off, if you catch it early, right, stops you from being 5 years down the road. So I like that a lot. And then the grit or quit, that is, Nick and I worked together through 3 acquisitions within a company, and it was clear that third one, like the degrees were 2 after the second one. We're like, Nick identified it straight away, and it was the culture clash with our core values, and it was like, it's time to go on, move on and do something else. So one of the things, folks will say, like you said, the real Ted Lasso, and you've got this background in sports and entertainment. And we love the parallels with sports. So how do you see roles in athletic teams paralleling those in corporate teams? Because for sure, Ted Lasso was not a soccer show, right? We wrote a whole leadership book on it. Like, obviously we didn't think it was just about soccer. And any fun stories where the analogy really clicked with a team or a client?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm a core millennial, right, Marnie? Like, I came of age with Space Jam, Michael Jordan, right? Like, and I think that in my case, basketball is a great parallel because it is a team sport. Nick, I know you're wanting to go watch the Masters here in a little bit. There's an element of foursome and team play, but humor me here on the basketball analogy. There's so many different positions you can play on the court, or rather roles you can play on the court. And I see that in a corporate setting as well when I work with high functioning teams. And when I say high functioning, that doesn't mean that they're perfect. That means that there can still be competitiveness when we're striving for collaboration. It means that there's seasons where you can give 110, so to speak, and then there's seasons where grandma dies and like you're at 30 and you need your teammates to pick you up. And so I think about in Space Jam when the players had their like power taken away and they're like, oh my gosh, what's my identity? Who am I? Right. And it's such an interesting, I feel like, tale to corporate leaders of like, your identity isn't what you do, it's how you do it and how you're remembered doing it with other people. And so I hope that resonates with listeners, because I think that in Ted Lasso's case, he was so good at not telling somebody how to put a soccer ball in the back of a net. He was good at getting them to gel and come together. And I'm going to bring it back to pop culture again. We mentioned Backstreet Boys earlier. One of my favorite scenes of all time had nothing to do with them playing as they know it football as we know it soccer. It had to do with them rehearsing the
Yeah.
instinct bye 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 skit.
Yeah.
That is what creates culture. That's what creates psychological safety, trust. And from that place is where we see performance excel.
I'm picturing Ted. Bye, bye, bye. Just that's a great scene. Yeah.
Best.
And it's funny. We obviously talk about Ted Lasso all the time. We marry that and we relate the concepts of the show to leadership. But what was clearly not evident, maybe just a little bit, was this whole notion of strategy. And a lot of people think about leadership as this strategic visionary, so to speak. But there are so many important points around building culture and working together as a team and trust and things like that, which, if done right, yeah, there's a pocket of strategy that always needs to be considered, but that isn't the be all end all. And so many people think it is. So I love the way you brought that across. Switching gears a little bit, Milam, we've just launched a new newsletter called Work in Progress that is all about career advice to some extent. And we're curious, what's one piece of career advice that you hear all the time, but you disagree with?
I feel very strongly about this in my bones, Nick. Very strongly. I heard it early in my career. I started my career in New York City. Intense place, right? Oh, the concrete jungle, where dreams are made of. If you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. It is a pressure cooker. And the advice I heard was fake it till you make it. And I'm a boy from Texas. I'm like, how do I fake it to fit in with these very arguably brash, or some would say assertive, some would say confident, but there's a lot of bravado, I would argue, in a market like New York. And it served me a little bit. We're in the beginning until you realize you don't want to keep up this illusion, these appearances. That's exhausting. It's truly exhausting. So I think fake it till you make it is BS, full stop. And I think that there's ways that we can, again, embody authenticity and be vulnerable, not to make us feel weak or feel not ready. Who's ever actually ready? We're always, progress is, as you put it in your new newsletter, it's messy. And so how do we embrace that mess and just say, like, let's make this messy journey as beautiful and as fun and as joyful as possible. And that's relatable. People will relate to that. And that's where people will spot a mentee and be like, I want to mentor them because I remember that challenge. Or better yet, somebody within your organization say, I want to sponsor them. I see potential before they see it in themselves. That's what leaders do. And they're able to really develop that and extract that potential and sponsor you to rise in an organization, especially in an era where there's so much turnover and very, very little employee loyalty, just because um, it's I feel like the way the world of work is right now, with jumping from place to place. And if we had those leaders that we felt more connected to, those charismatic leaders, I think we wouldn't see as much attrition and less turnover.
So I feel like you tied together like the truth of the fake it till you make it with the false piece of it. It's the risk because you're not ready, right? That's what you're faking is like, yeah, I don't have all of the skills. So it's a stretch to do that. But what you're not faking is the authentic version of who you are, right? And that's, I think, the critical piece. It's interesting because you've reinvented yourself a couple of times. So I want to use that to transition to this notion of season 4. Can they reinvent a new Ted that continues, right? The power and love that we had of the first 3 seasons. And how would you reinvent Ted for a new adventure?
Okay, so I've read some spoilers, I got to be honest. And I don't want to give away too much because also I want to be surprised, right?
Yeah.
But I think that before I share that, reinvention is a beautiful thing. Evolution is natural and normal. And Milam at 35 going on 36 is a new father of a 1-year-old is so different than Milam at 25 moving to Europe at 26. Like, it's just, how could I be the same person? I want to embrace my own evolution, my own reinvention. So I know that Ted is capable of doing that. He is so playful, and I love his playfulness, his optimism, his zest for life. I've heard that there might be an angle around women's football.
Yeah.
And when I worked for AS Roma in Rome, Italy, I was fortunate to be part of the club in a very historic time. The club was founded in 1927. And I want to say it was around circa 2019, maybe 2018, could have been even as early as 2017, that we launched our women's soccer team. And it was wonderful for a number of reasons, wildly successful in terms of fan turnout, just fan interest, but even from a commercial lens, because that's where I sat on the business. I wasn't a coach like Ted on the pitch. I was more of like a Higgins reported to the owner, but doing deals like Keely Jones, like kind of that hybrid, and very much a front office revenue generating guy. And it was a wonderful asset for us. Now, I don't say that to capitalize off like women and like let's profit off them. I say that because this is truly a movement. It is not a moment. And I think the minute that we embrace women's sports, as Jason Sudeikis, the real Ted Lasso, he wears the shirt all the time. Everyone watches women's sports, and I'm such an ally of that. I am a champion of that. That was me during March Madness, watching my Texas Longhorn women's basketball making it to the Final Four for the first time since 2003. So I say all that because I know that Ted is, if that is actually the storyline, the narrative, I'm really excited to see how he connects with them in a way that is so uniquely Ted, in a way that makes them feel seen, heard, and valued to go out and do the dang thing on the pitch.
You just got me pumped, Milam. I'm ready. I'm ready.
So ready.
Were you in the camp that they should just leave Ted Lasso as it was with 3 seasons? It was perfect as it is and not continue, or were you looking forward to season 4? I'm curious.
I needed more. I needed season 4 because leaving us on the cliffhanger with the family dynamics, which again is just so relatable, such a human struggle. I'm here, but I really want to be there with my son. And just, it's such a heartwarming show. Like, give us more. If there's demand, then let's supply it. So I'm super grateful to the writers, the producers, everyone who makes this show possible, because we all benefit from its brilliance.
Absolutely. So we've talked a lot about sports. We've talked about basketball earlier. Obviously there's the whole football/soccer theme in Ted Lasso. And I know in your book, The Charisma Craft, you actually bring in a lot of characters from the sports world, real life characters. We're curious, in sports just in general, did you have role models in the realm of sports? And if so, what qualities did they embody that you've kind of incorporated into your own leadership style?
I love this question, Nick, because role model is I think, a word that a lot of professional athletes have a complicated relationship with. They're like,
Sure
I'm a
do.
human. How did I didn't ask to become a role model. I was just playing a
I'm really good
sport.
at soccer.
Yeah, I'm playing a sport I love. But at the same time, I think that's what's the saying? Heavy is those who wear the crown. Like there's a real call and a real responsibility. And I see so many athletes step up to the plate, so to speak, so brilliantly and honor that call and make children's dreams come true. My earliest recollection of my role models, if we want to call them, was the triplets of the Dallas Cowboys: Troy Aikman, Emmitt Smith, Michael Irvin. And I absolutely love Dion. I got to throw Dion in there. I know he came to the Cowboys later, but Dion's kind of had a resurgence, his own evolution. He's had a moment in recent years, and I think he's a great player coach because he meets them where they are, this generation. But there's really two athletes in particular that stand out to me that carried me through my formative years, and that was Derek Jeter of the New York Yankees, one of the main reasons why I moved to New York City to launch my career, and then Tim Duncan of the San Antonio Spurs. And both of those teams were high functioning, high performing teams. The Yankees dynasty of the 90s, and then they won again later in the 2000s, as well as Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili. I mean, he was the cornerstone. And it's funny to me as I reflect when you ask this question, both Derek Jeter and Tim Duncan are not what we think of charisma, this like gregarious, like a Shaquille O'Neal, someone who's really,
Out
really
there.
playful and funny and out there. They exhibited what I consider quiet confidence. And I don't know if that's necessarily me. I think to some extent that is me. I'm kind of like Derek Jeter. You hit the game winning thing, and I get real electric, real excited because I'm an enthusiastic guy. And even Tim Duncan, I've seen him get excited. But oddly enough, I did not write about them in my book. That's not to discredit their leadership style, but I really wanted to anchor on one male example and one female example within the same sport or discipline that embodied my ABCs of charisma. So I talk about Serena Williams and Roger Federer, how they embody authenticity differently. I talk about David Beckham versus Megan Rapinoe, how they as soccer stars embody boldness differently. And then I talk about how Allison Felix and more recently Noah Lyles, if you followed the Olympics in Paris, how they embody curiosity, because track is all about just down to the millisecond. You have to be maniacally like curious about your routine, who you are, and how you show up. And I think that we can take those principles from these athletes who have excelled at their craft and bring them into corporate spaces to excel at our craft too.
You know what I find, just random aside on both of the players that you mentioned, um, I think you nailed their quiet confidence. But if you think about it, they both really built off of mentors, right? Tim Duncan had David Robinson, and I think, and Derek Jeter probably. I know that the Yankees, Don Mattingly, I don't know if that was quite right era or Bernie Williams, but there were people that allowed them to kind of grow, and I think that's an important part of their story if you look back, and I think it helped them really be comfortable being quietly confident and assured. Just a random aside that I had.
And
I
it,
love that
Those two
aside, Nick.
choices.
I just want to meet you there real quick because that's a brilliant aspect to point out. You're totally right. David Robinson's mentorship and tutelage, the Admiral, and in Derek Jeter's case, he came through the Yankees farm system, and he had both those players you mentioned, the Don Mattingly, former captain, and then Derek Jeter became captain of the team,
Yeah.
as well as Bernie Williams. I touched on mentorship earlier, and I was so fortunate to find mentors early in my career. And for any listeners that are like, well, I don't know how to do that, like, what does that look like? Simply ask.
Yeah.
Simply ask, will you mentor me? And then you both get to co-create, co-define, create an alliance that mutually serves both of you. And mentorship is just something I love to do. I give back to my university. I mentioned the University of Texas at Austin. And I used to be a mentor with Big Brothers Big Sisters. And it changed how I think about um, just having so much reverence for childhood and the joy that comes from it. And I see people like Ted Lasso who keep that childlike playfulness, that wonder and awe, to realize that the work is serious. The work is hard. Like, work is hard, but that doesn't mean it can't be fun and joyful and playful. So I really appreciate you highlighting that, Nick.
so for the record, for our listeners, yes, if anyone came on and gave any Sports Reference, Nick would know some additional background on.
I'm somewhere on the spectrum with sports. Yes, that's true.
I have been blown away constantly where I'm like, what? Oh, wow. All right. So anyway, one of my favorite quotes in Ted Lasso is the notion of same but different, right? So he talks about that in all of his experiences going to the UK instead of the US, football. So for sure, you must meet, diverse perspectives of leaders with a lot of backgrounds. So can you share an experience where embracing kind of same but different helped maybe bridge a gap or create a stronger team dynamic in any of your work?
That's it's Marnie. This is a really tough question because there's so many examples
Yeah,
popping into
popping up.
my
I hear you.
yeah, and I think I would probably answer it in a couple of ways. Number one, as a non-native Italian speaker, when I went to work for an Italian football club, there of course was that language barrier.
Mm.
Um, it- Same objective to advance this historic football club founded in 1927, but maybe different approaches, a local approach, knowing the market versus a more global approach of building it to be a brand like the New York Yankees, right? That's aspirational and people buy the baseball cap because it makes them feel tied to the city of New York. So there was that element of getting over it. But I would also add, having lived in the UK, we speak the same language, but it's drastically different, as you mentioned, pitch and field. And so I think that probably one of the coolest moments in my career was when I was fortunate to go to the Middle East, to Doha, ahead of the World Cup when they took place there in 2022, to pitch Qatar Airways to be on the front of our kit. And I went there thinking it would be a no more than 3 to 5 day business trip, and we ended up staying 2 weeks. And during that time, I realized that there was so much different about our cultures. There was even things like I was staying at a W hotel, but it was a dry hotel. They had like a wet hour, meaning if you wanted to imbibe drinking alcohol, you had set hours to do that. And I'd never been exposed to a culture where that was common. And in staying there and getting to understand the culture, travel to the souks and talk, I realized we may be different, but we want the same objective, which is advancing the global sport of football that brings people together. And so once we got clear on that, they always refer to it as a global vocation, which the sport or language of football. I realized this deal is going to happen. We just need to iron out little minutia details. I knew how many LED minutes we had available or what was possible, to do digital campaigns and so forth. And it really took a village. I can't take full credit for that by any means because there was a team, not just in Doha, but a team behind us, back office supporting us and making sure that we got that deal across the line. And we ultimately did. 3-year deal, biggest commercial deal in the club's history. And I was so proud of those Nike kits when I saw Qatar Airways printed on there because it's a best in class airline, beautiful cabin, beautiful customer service, and just knowing what went into it to really understand their culture, not just sell to them, but understand them and the business objectives and make the partnership happen.
I think there's so much gold in what you just talked about, Milam, but it just kept getting reminded as you talked about that. So many times we lose focus of an overall objective because we don't take the time to understand everyone else's perspectives. And I think you talked around that, talked about that in such an elegant manner. I think that was gold for this particular podcast. So thank you. Let's switch gears one more time. We often talk about ourselves as leadership geeks, not necessarily gurus. But there's one thing we know for sure, and we talk about this, we hear every expert talk about this, which is that the most important thing for everybody is to really understand themselves first. So we're always interested to hear different perspectives on this. And we're curious, Milam, with you, how do you help others not only connect and understand what their what is, but understand their why? I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
It's a profound question because I find in my experience, Nick, I think my why has changed. I say that as a new father, and I say that as somebody who maybe my why early in my career was experience driven. I wanted to be in the melting pot that was New York, and soak up as many experiences as possible, be a sponge. And then maybe my why shifted to, um, I, I want adventure. I want, maybe even I want recognition. It's easy. Also, I remember at one point in my career, one of my mentors was named to Sports Business Journal's 40 under 40. And I thought that I'll make it when I've been named 40 under 40. And I had to unlearn that. Like, there's nothing wrong with having that aspiration or ambition if that feels like it's in service of your highest good. But over time, I realized that's not my why anymore. My why is so different. So I say all that because I want to encourage listeners to allow your why to change. It goes back to evolution. And I think the best leaders, or how should I put it? Maybe the most impactful or effective leaders help others discover their why. And I would distill it down to three things. Number one, help them see what it is that makes them tick before they know it, like see potential in them before they see it in themselves. Number two, create spaciousness for memory recall. Really remember what matters to them, because if you can highlight that as a leader, it's probably highlighting something they value and something that they're upholding. And then third and finally, uh, we've got to practice what we preach and do our best to model it. None of us are perfect, but I think leaders that have an active gratitude practice or are really good at modeling that, even recognizing, acknowledging, paying it forward, it instills in other people a sense of, why am I doing this? What's what is the reason behind it? And if we can get really grateful for that messy journey we've talked about, then the why becomes clear, whenever we log what it is we're grateful for, what it is we're learning. And I had leaders exhibit that for me. I'm a big journal guy. I have so many right here. I mean, I'm just grabbing them off my desk. And this is my treasure trove because it reminds me of who I was. It grounds me on where I am, and it helps me see where I want to go. So that's, I hope I answered your question, Nick, but
Oh, you absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean,
how I see
you
purpose.
very explicitly answered the question. So that was awesome. Thanks, Milam.
So this is called leadership rules, right? So is there a leadership rule you live by?
Okay, I'm kind of cheeky here, Marnie, because I do think rules are meant to be broken or bent a little bit. Like, if we
Fair.
don't have rules, then it's anarchy, it's chaos. But like, rules are also, they're made by us. So that means they're subject to change or be reevaluated if they would serve us in better way. So you can imagine, in high school, my parents were like, this guy. I was a good kid, but like playful kid. It was like going to like TP people's houses. Like, that's playful, right? There's no rule that says I can't toilet paper someone's house. So
Well,
depends on, maybe the alliance between the parents. But all that to say, a rule, so to speak, that I live by, or kind of my North Star, is rooted in human connection, which I do think what underpins that is curiosity. We can really connect when we get curious. And so what I like to say is charisma creates connection. And charisma isn't about me. It's about them. It's not one-way attraction. It's two-way human connection. So by charisma creating connection, that drives performance. The charismatic leaders that are able to connect with their people, they understand their motivations, intrinsic and extrinsic, and it drives motivation. So that's kind of my North Star, at least in terms of how to connect with others in the workplace.
Awesome. So can people connect with you? Where do we find more information about Milam, Be Confident and Kind, the Charisma Craft? Let our audience know how they might find out more.
Thank you. So I'm on the World Wide Web. My site is www.beconfidentandkind.com. Again, we are a leadership development practice. And you can also find me on LinkedIn. I do my best to create content when I'm not chasing a baby or preparing for a keynote speech. And then finally on the gram, which is mainly a baby feed these days, but always good nuggets of wisdom. For example, the masters. I've had some content on there this week, Nick, and other thought leaders that I admire that just, why not amplify their work doing great things, such as you two. So I'm so grateful that y'all had me on, and I appreciate this platform.
Oh, so glad you came. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Milam.